So this has no Linux code, and it's ring 0 only, and it's identity mapped. Anybody who knows what those words mean would say, yeah, no Linux code. Ring 0 only means there's no protection on anything. This is like DOS, except multitasking, and it's 64-bit. This is all the code there is, line count rep. I run Linux, and I run VMware in Linux. I run this in a virtual machine on Linux. The reason I don't run natively is because the BIOS boots my kernel module, but then it comes time for my kernel to access the disk, and when my kernel my kernel changed to 64-bit mode, and when my kernel goes to access the disk with ATA port IO, then there's no device there. What you have to do is first locate the ports for the device, and then, but if the BIOS doesn't set up the device, or if it's no longer supporting port IO, you're out. You can't do anything. What I'm going to do is I'm going to command all the fucking BIOS and hardware manufacturers to support God's temple out of the fucking box. I'm bigger than Jesus because I proved God in a modern, once and for all. Okay, so somebody bigger than Jesus says support God's temple, and the motherfuckers are going to do it. It's just a matter of time. God's got to kill the CIA, and then we profit. So, anyway, so yeah, we remove code. We don't add code. That is, from now on, we just remove code. So that means all this shit that was to figure out which port, I try primary and secondary, and I go to the PCI config space to try and figure out what ports. We're going to command them to stick the fucking hard drive on the primary IDE, the CD-ROM on the secondary, and then we get to eliminate a couple hundred lines of code that tries to figure out. They cluster fucked it. Why did they anyway? So yes, I don't add code, I remove code. We're going to get rid of, I have FAT32. We're going to stick with Red C. Let's show what Red C is like. Partition rep. Okay, B drive is Red C RAM drive. So I'm going to Control D, gets you to the file manager. Let's go ahead and copy my archive. Control C. Then we go up to the B drive. Control V. So now a lot of my files are on the B drive. Now, when I was a kid, the CIA absolutely does not want this, but the CIA is gonna fucking suck dick because I say so. So this is the B drive, and if we do a directory star true, we get the clusters. When I had a Commodore 64, I had the pleasure of, this is the cluster for the dot, which is the current directory. So what we say is dump cluster. We can even write to it. Let's do that. 0x, dump the cluster, and we say true because we want to write to it. Okay, so this is the directory cluster. We want all the little kids to have the joy of modifying their directory on their own to delete files and undelete files and allocate the bitmap. Okay, now I hit escape. Now notice what it says up here. says old school right there. I changed it to old space school. So I hit escape and it writes cluster. Now we say directory, and now it says old space school. So that's what we want. All the little kids, and they can look at the bitmap. They can look at the master boot. So unfortunately, I'm kind of rude because I store them compressed. If you can, let's convert this to move or rename. We're moving it to no Z, not Z. We're moving it to not Z. Now bling is not Z. Dir star true. We get the cluster number. It's a Nazi. D cluster. I'm just going to say 0x. Okay, so there's the file. The kids can have fun. They can learn how to program. They can mess with their disk. If the kids want to write, let's do a directory. Edit test.cpp.z. Watch how cool. Now the red C is if you can get rid of, if you only have one file system, you do not need a virtual file system. Are you listening? If you only have one file system, you don't need an abstraction layer. You just have the one. So guess what's going to happen? This is my abstraction layer that's from when you do find files, it returns a directory entry. Once we get rid of FAT and ISO, it's going to be just like what it's stored on the disk. This is the start of the directory entry. It's 64 bytes, and it's stored on a disk just like that. So we can, let's read the, do you want to read the boot sector? Okay, fine, let's do it. C partition star P equals drive to partition B. Then we say % X colon P. I happen to know the offset is what it starts at. Let's go ahead and run this. Wow. Offset 0. Okay, so the RAM disk, it's offset 0. So I wonder if we can U8 buffer 512. That's a block size. Read blocks, partition. What do we got? Buffer block count, comma buffer block number 0, comma count. We didn't set this as bootable. This is our master. Comma 1 block dump buffer, comma 512. This is reading block number 0. Okay, so if we want to see what that is, I can show you what it is. Master boot. FAT32. It's one of these master boot. Okay. Let's see if it's a master boot. I think I set the signature is AA55. The last one, AA55's got the signature. attribute name, no, media ID. So this is the master boot. There's not a bootloader installed on this RAM disk, obviously. Actually, we could, if we wanted to, we could boot to the RAM disk with some trickery. Not a BIOS boot, but anyway. So now this is what I did with my Commodore 64, and this is. I like to say everybody gets excited because Linux is open source, but then they take a look at the source and they go, fuck that. That's just dreadful. Nobody likes that source code. It's too awful. So nobody uses the open source.